Welcome to Spotlight California. Today we have Matt Lopez, creator and showrunner of Promised Lands, a generation-spanning drama about two Latinx families that is shot here in California. Matt, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we are delighted to have you here, not only here on Spotlight, but here shooting Promised Land in the great state of California because you relocated from Georgia. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We did. So the show Promised Land is set entirely or almost entirely in Sonoma, California. And to be honest, when I wrote it, I thought I had written a Georgia-proof script. And we ended up shooting the pilot in Georgia. But it was always our goal and my passion to get the show home to California for reasons related to both story and production. Story, I would say the project of Promised Land, it's very much inspired by Steinbeck and gives off real Steinbeck vibes and that connection to the land, and it's set in the world of California vineyards, which is obviously very spectacular and very beautiful, but also very specific. And then in practical terms, because what my past experience has shown me is by a Gulf-wide margin, California crews are the best in the world, and I've enjoyed working with them the most. And so very selfishly, we knew that we had an aggressive release schedule for our episodes, and I knew that to deliver our episodes on time, we would need to have top quality crews.
And you found those top quality crews since you've been back. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes. And it was immediately evident. So we actually, on the first episode, the pilot, the majority of which was shot in Georgia, I was able to get a couple of days at the very end of the show. There were a couple of locations that we simply could not find out of state, that we could only find in California. And so I was able to get us essentially 2 days of shooting in California. And so on our first day on set with a Los Angeles crew, we had a shot that required a very large blue screen to be set up. And I had been used to the pace that our crew out of state worked at. And we got here and we're setting up for the first shot to be shot in California. And I looked away for what felt like 10 seconds. I'm sure it was a little longer. And when I looked back, this huge blue screen had been set up, and it just like went up seemingly in the blink of an eye. And I was like, oh, I'm back in California. It was like, these men and women are the best in the business at what they do. They know what they're doing, and we're in very good hands.
That's right. And time is money on set. So
time is money.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because I continue to hear, in this capacity, that California crews simply are the best in the world. So thank you so much for sharing that. And the show is amazing. There's so much visual appeal with all the beautiful locations that you choose to shoot in. But some of them are doubling as for Sonoma, which the show is supposed to be set in Sonoma, but you're using some beautiful locations and vineyards here in Southern California. Can you tell us a little bit about the locations you've chosen?
Yes. So the show is set in Sonoma, and we briefly looked into, even before the decision had been 100% made to return to California, we explored the idea of possibly shooting it in Sonoma. And obviously you would have the authenticity up there, and you would have the beauty of those vineyards, et cetera, et cetera. What ultimately tipped the scales in favor of Southern California was just access to the sound stages, right? There are a lot more available sound stages in Southern California. So we have 2 hero vineyards in Southern California, one in Thousand Oaks and one in Santa Clarita that we use to double as Sonoma. But we also shot a fair amount of what's called B-roll footage, drone shots, plate shots, establishing shots, transitional shots, beauty shots in the Central Coast, in some of those vineyards in Santa Ynez area, and so on. And should we be lucky enough to get a season 2, I think we will also explore shooting some of that material in Sonoma, in true wine country. We started discussions with a vineyard up there on the Sonoma coast, actually, so a little bit west of the main vine area in Sonoma County. And just by virtue of certain climate conditions, their leaves up there started to change a little bit quicker than the leaves down here, which is usually the reverse, but so be it. The weather conditions and so on led to that. And so that also was another thing that ultimately augured in favor of Southern California, is we got a few more weeks before harvest season down here this year.
That's great. Well, you explore so many different themes in the show Promised Land. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about the multi-generational exploration of the current state of the American dream.
It's the American dream and the pursuit of the American dream in all its beauty, in occasionally, what it costs us, what it costs to achieve the dream, what it costs to maintain the dream once you've achieved it, which is often even a higher cost. That's sort of the heart of the show, really. And I've always seen that, as it's very much for millions of immigrants from all over the world. It's very much, I think, a California dream too. You go back to, again, channeling those Steinbeck vibes, you go back to the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and families from the Midwest and from the Great Plains seeking a better life in California. And you can draw a pretty straight line from that to the waves of immigrant workers who have worked California fields and vineyards for generations now, coming from parts south, coming from Mexico, from Central America, from South America. And the pursuit of that dream is something that, as I said, lives at the heart of the show. What Promised Land does is it looks at the immigrant experience in America and the pursuit of that dream from 2 different places in the timeline. So in the first episode, we're introduced to 2 families. One is a set of immigrants who have just arrived here and who are on their way to Sonoma to work in a vineyard where they've heard that there's work. The other family is the family that owns the vineyard, and the vineyard is extremely, extremely successful. We're told they're the third largest wine grower in the country. And so for the whole first episode, we're cutting back and forth between these people who are pursuing the dream and these people who have seemingly achieved the dream. What we find out only down the stretch of the very first episode, spoiler alert, is that it's actually we're watching the same characters separated by 30 years. And that those immigrants who in the first images of the show we see coming over the wall and embarking on their voyage to Sonoma will in 30 years' time become the patriarch and the matriarch of this vineyard family. And so what the series will do is cut back and forth between these 2 timelines to show us a glimpse of the pursuit of that dream at 2 different vantage points. So we get to see I think in a really delicious way, the best of both worlds. We get a family empire at the height of its power, juxtaposed against the scrappy immigrant story of how that empire came to be.
Right. You do sense that you are in effect exposing the challenges of the new immigrants' assimilation, and that plays out throughout the show as well.
Yeah, I'm a third generation American, and I've lived these things. There's something very beautiful to assimilation. Like there's something wonderful. It's what we grew up hearing in school, like the beauty and the majesty really of the melting pot. But there are costs to assimilation too. There's a distance from your culture. There's that push and pull between wanting to be American and as American as possible, and yet retaining something of where you came from and the values and the cultural touchstones that were part of your upbringing. The very first inspiration I had for this idea came at a pretty unlikely place, and that was at a Home Depot. And I showed up at my local Home Depot to pick up some things. And in the parking lot, as you sometimes see in Home Depot, there were several day laborers, waiting in the parking lot, waiting for some foreman to come by in a pickup truck and offer them a day's wage so they could feed their families. And I had this moment of clarity, if you will, where I thought, wow, on the one hand, my life as a third generation American is so different from theirs because I grew up by no means like wealthy or extravagant, but comfortable and with opportunities as a third generation American that I've been able to take advantage of. And their lives, as I said, seem so different, but at the same time, on a deeper level, I thought to myself, the only real difference is the passage of time, because those men were my grandparents, my great grandparents, people who worked in factories, who worked in fields. And that's where the idea of the two timelines, like seeing the two generations of the immigrant experience, that's where it came from.
Yeah. Well, the show has been referred to as a primetime soap opera. I hope you don't mind that, because you're speaking to someone who used to produce a soap opera very proudly. And interestingly enough, my father-in-law used to work in the 1960s at an ad agency, and he would watch his soap commercials come on and then see these dramatic segments in between the next soap commercial. And he became so intrigued with the dramatic content in between that he went on to create many soap operas, two of which are still on the air today. So I do have a background in this, and I know that I can speak for the show that I used to work on, The Bold and the Beautiful. But so many of the dramatic themes that are played out on these types of shows are rich with characters and intrigue and information and just really wonderful, deliberate and thoughtful storytelling. It's not about cat fights and that type of thing. It's a wonderful vehicle for telling important stories. So I'm just wondering how you feel about having Promised Land referred to as a primetime soap opera.
I don't shun it, and I don't hide from it at all, because I think, frankly, yes, there are soaps that, it's all about who's blackmailing who and whose long lost twin has been stranded on a desert island for 30 years and that sort of thing. But I look at it a little differently, which is, I'm a big Dickens fan. And I like to say that Dickens wrote television. Dickens wrote soap. And what I mean by that is many of his great novels were actually written not as I'm going to sit down and write a novel. He wrote them as serialized weeklies. It was literally like weekly television, and then they would be compiled into David Copperfield or be compiled into Oliver Twist. And so the DNA is very much there. It's kind of a soap opera DNA. I talked about Steinbeck earlier. It's no different. East of Eden, which is a novel I love and which was a huge inspiration for Promised Land. If you boil down East of Eden to just the log line, it's a primetime soap. It's like there's two brothers. Their mother is the town prostitute. One brother finds out. Can he tell the other brother? There are these two families. It's literally a soap. But in terms of what it's going for, the depths of its characterizations of the characters, the richness of the themes that are, as you say, almost Shakespearean, they're very timeless. It's going for something much more. And that's the line that I think we walk really effectively on Promised Land. We absolutely deliver the goods on the soap. There are cliffhangers, there are twists, there are turns, there are beautiful actors, beautiful cars, homes, and outfits. But we're also telling this story, this very aspirational story of the American dream. And there's an entire set of characters that are completely at the other end of that journey and that socioeconomic spectrum. And that striving is something that I think gives the show a really rich added dimension.
And it definitely does. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I couldn't agree with you more on your depiction of soap operas and what it is in the DNA. It truly, they are dramatic serials, and delivering great cliffhangers is a real art form too, as you know. Getting your audience to tune in week after week, or in my circumstances, day after day. So I really appreciate you very, very much coming on to Spotlight California with us today. But before we're finished, we do a lightning round, okay? There's no right or wrong answer here. There's no right or wrong answer. So we'll have at it, okay? So, Matt, what has been your guilty pleasure during COVID?
Ooh, the Great British Bake Off.
That's a good one. Favorite filming location, or choose one filming location among your favorites in California.
I'm going to say one of our locations right now. We're shooting at the Mizel Vineyard in Thousand Oaks, California. And every time I am there, I am just like, I want to spend so much time here. It is so gorgeous and beautiful. It's just inspiring.
Favorite way to spend a Saturday night?
Saturday night, I would say sushi with my wife and two daughters, and then putting on Turner Classic Movies and watching some great old Humphrey Bogart or Bette Davis picture.
That's a good one. Okay, one word to describe California.
At the risk of touting my own show, I will use the word promise.
Favorite beach?
I will say, there's so many good ones. I'm going to say my old stomping grounds, Ocean Park, Santa Monica Beach.
Beautiful. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise. For many, many years before I was writing full time, I was a business affairs executive and an attorney for DreamWorks, SKG, when they were, doing Saving Private Ryan and those movies. But I was trying to break in as a writer. So I would write every morning from 4 to 7:30. I did that for 5 years. So I'm a very sunrise oriented person.
Coffee or tea?
1000% coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Ooh, I like both, but I'll say dogs.
Favorite classic movie?
I'm going to say 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Profession other than your own that you would like to attempt?
if I had another life to live, I wouldn't do anything different and I would still be a writer. But if I had a parallel, like this version of Matt could go do something, I would be a doctor.
Matt Lopez, creator and showrunner of Promised Land. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Colleen. This has been such a treat. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having Promised Land in California.